Nelson Mandela. This name is not just written in the history books of South Africa, but in the hearts of millions of people around the world. He was a freedom fighter, a revolutionary, a prisoner, and finally, a president. But more than all these titles, he was a symbol of hope, courage, and forgiveness. Born in a small village in South Africa, he rose to become one of the greatest leaders the world has ever seen. When we think about justice, equality, and fighting for human rights, his name always comes to mind. Mandela spent 27 years of his life in prison for fighting against apartheid, a cruel system that separated people by their skin color and treated black South Africans as if they were less than human. Many people would have lost hope after spending so many years behind bars. Many would have become bitter or angry. But Mandela came out of prison with a heart full of forgiveness, ready to unite his country instead of dividing it further. That is what made him so special. He once said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love." In 1994, he became the first black president of South Africa, leading his nation towards peace and reconciliation after decades of racial oppression. But becoming president was never his true goal. His real mission was to create a country where all people could live with dignity and respect, no matter what their race was. He believed deeply in freedom, equality, and human dignity for everyone. Throughout his life, Mandela showed the world what true leadership means. He was willing to sacrifice his own life and comfort for the freedom of others. Even when he was hurt, even when he was treated unfairly, he chose forgiveness over revenge. He inspired people to believe that change is possible, even when it feels impossible. Today, as we begin his life story, I want you to think about your own life. About the things you fight for. About the dreams you have, and the people you want to help. Because Nelson Mandela's life reminds us that one person's courage can change the world. And maybe, just maybe, you have that same courage inside you too. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in a small village called Mvizo, in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. His birth name was Rolihlahla Mandela, which in his Xhosa language means, pulling the branch of a tree, or more commonly, troublemaker. Little did anyone know that this boy would grow up to challenge and pull down the strong branches of injustice in his country. Mandela was born into the Thembu royal family. His father, Henry Mandela, was a respected local chief and counselor to the Thembu king. But when Nelson was just 9 years old, his father died, and his life changed forever. After his father's death, Mandela was sent to live with the regent of the Thembu people, Chief Janjantaba Dalindibo. It was here that he began to learn about leadership, responsibility, and the importance of serving others. As a boy, Mandela lived in the countryside, herding cattle and playing traditional stick-fighting games with other boys. He enjoyed listening to elders tell stories of their ancestors' bravery and wisdom. These stories planted the seeds of courage and pride in his heart. He believed that every person, no matter how small their village or poor their family, has the power to make a difference in the world. Mandela was the first in his family to attend school. On his first day, his teacher gave him the English name, Nelson, as it was common during that time for African children to be given Christian names. He loved learning. He was curious, disciplined, and ambitious. Education became his way of opening his mind to the wider world, of dreaming bigger than his village, and of understanding the system that kept his people oppressed. When he grew older, Mandela went to Heldtown, a respected school for black students, and then to the University of Fort Hare, the only university for black people in South Africa at the time. There, he studied English, anthropology, politics, and law. It was at university that he began to understand the depth of racial injustice in South Africa. He saw how his people were treated as second-class citizens in their own land, and his heart started burning with the desire for freedom and equality. But Mandela's early life was not just about struggle. It was also about deep culture, community, and values. The Xhosa traditions taught him respect for elders, the importance of community, and the belief that Ubuntu, the idea that I am because we are, was central to life. This idea of Ubuntu, of humanity towards others, would become a guiding principle in his fight for justice later in life. So, from the dusty roads of his village to the halls of Fort Hare University, Nelson Mandela's childhood and early life shaped him into a man who would one day stand up against the strongest system of oppression, armed only with his education, his courage, and his unbreakable spirit. After finishing his studies, Nelson Mandela moved to Johannesburg, the big city where dreams were made or broken. There, he worked as a law clerk and continued his studies to become a lawyer. But as he walked the busy streets, he saw injustice everywhere. Black South Africans were forced to carry passbooks just to move around. They couldn't vote, they couldn't go to the same schools as whites, and they were treated like strangers in their own land. The apartheid system was designed to keep them silent, poor, and powerless. Mandela could not accept this. In 1944, he joined the African National Congress, also known as the ANC, a political organization fighting for the rights of black South Africans. Together with his friends Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo, he formed the ANC Youth League to bring energy, courage, and new ideas into the movement. They organized protests, marches, and campaigns to challenge unjust laws. Mandela believed in peaceful resistance, inspired by leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. He wanted to fight the system with words, protests, and legal actions. But the government grew harsher. The police attacked peaceful protesters. In 1960, the Sharpeville massacre shocked the nation when police opened fire on a crowd, killing 69 people who were protesting peacefully. Mandela realized that words alone were not enough to bring freedom. That year, the ANC was banned, and Mandela went underground. He helped create Umkhonto we Sizwe, meaning, Spear of the Nation, the armed wing of the ANC. They carried out acts of sabotage, destroying government buildings and power stations, never to kill people, but to show the regime that the people would not remain silent forever. Mandela became known as the Black Pimpernel because he moved secretly around the country, organizing resistance while avoiding capture. But in 1962, his luck ran out. He was arrested and charged with leaving the country illegally and inciting workers to strike. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. But the government wasn't done with him yet. While he was in prison, police found documents that linked him to sabotage operations. In 1964, Mandela and his comrades were tried in the famous Rivonia trial. Everyone thought they would get the death penalty. But Mandela stood up in court and delivered a speech that moved the world. He said, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But if it needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." These words echoed beyond the courtrooms, beyond the prisons, beyond South Africa. They inspired millions of people to stand up against injustice, not only in South Africa but around the world. Mandela was sentenced to life in prison, but his struggle for freedom was far from over. In fact, it was about to enter its most painful and powerful chapter, the 27 years he spent behind bars, holding on to his dream of a free nation. In 1964, Nelson Mandela was sent to Robben Island, a lonely prison surrounded by cold ocean waters. For the next 18 years of his life, he woke up every day in a small, damp cell with no bed, just a thin mat on the stone floor. His cell was so small that he could not even stretch his arms fully. The prison guards treated him and other political prisoners harshly. They were forced to break stones under the hot sun, their eyes burning from the glare. They were given little food, and the letters from their families were often censored or delayed for months. Even seeing their loved ones was rare. Many people would have lost hope in such a place. Many would have given up, thinking freedom was impossible. But Nelson Mandela chose a different path. Every day, he woke up with dignity. He kept his mind sharp by reading, studying law, and teaching other prisoners about politics, history, and leadership. He believed that education was the most powerful weapon to change the world, even behind bars. Mandela also showed great wisdom. He treated even the prison guards with respect. At first, the guards hated him because of what he represented, a threat to their way of life. But over time, they saw his calm, his discipline, and his humanity. He talked to them kindly, learned about their families, and treated them as people. Slowly, their attitudes changed. Mandela believed that if you wanted to change society, you must first understand your enemy, not hate them. In 1982, he was transferred to Pollsmoor Prison, and later to Victor Verster Prison. During these years, his legend grew stronger outside. The people of South Africa and supporters worldwide demanded his freedom. Free Nelson Mandela became a global song of justice. For Black South Africans, he was more than a leader. He was a symbol that their struggle was not in vain. For the world, he became the face of the anti-apartheid movement. During his prison years, the government offered him freedom many times on the condition that he would give up his fight and tell the people to stop resisting. But Mandela refused. He said, "What freedom am I being offered while the organization of the people remains banned? Only free men can negotiate. A prisoner cannot enter into contracts." Finally, on February 11, 1990, after 27 years, Mandela walked out of prison holding the hand of his then-wife, Winnie Mandela. He was older, his hair now gray, but his spirit was unbroken. Crowds of people cheered, sang, and cried. The man who entered prison as a young revolutionary came out as the father of a nation. His years in prison taught him patience, forgiveness, and strategy. He once said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." Mandela walked out not with revenge in his heart but with a vision to unite his country, black and white, to build a new South Africa where everyone had equal rights. His sacrifice showed the world that true leadership is not about power, but about service, courage, and the willingness to suffer for what is right. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, but when he finally walked free, he showed the world the true meaning of leadership and forgiveness. Just 4 years after his release, in 1994, he became the first black president of South Africa. Imagine that, a man who was once considered a terrorist by his own government became the leader of the very same country. But becoming president was not about power or revenge for Mandela. It was about building a nation that could stand united, strong, and free. As president, Mandela focused on bringing together a country deeply divided by racism and hate. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to help victims and perpetrators of apartheid talk about their experiences and forgive each other. He encouraged forgiveness over revenge. He even invited his former prison guards to his presidential inauguration, showing everyone that hate only builds more hate, but forgiveness builds nations. He once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." Mandela also believed deeply in education. He said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." Throughout his life, he pushed for better schools, equal opportunities, and the idea that children are the future of any nation. But perhaps the greatest lesson from Nelson Mandela's life is about hope. No matter how dark his days were, no matter how painful the journey became, he never lost hope for a better tomorrow. He believed that change is always possible, even if it takes years, decades, or an entire lifetime. His courage reminds us that standing up for what is right is never easy. It may cost you your freedom, your comfort, and sometimes even your life. But it is always worth it. Today, his name is not just remembered in South Africa, but across the entire world. Streets, schools, hospitals, and organizations are named after him. July 18, his birthday, is celebrated as Nelson Mandela International Day, a day to honor his memory by serving others and making the world a better place, even in small ways. As we finish this story, think about what Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." Maybe there is something in your life right now that feels impossible, a dream, a goal, or a fight for what you believe in. Remember Nelson Mandela. Remember his strength, his patience, his sacrifice, and his love. Let his story give you courage to keep going, because even the smallest steps, taken with faith and persistence, can change the world.